Good evening, and welcome to the Putnam Valley Board of Education work session/business meeting of April 8th, 2021. Please stand and join me as we salute our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Hope everybody's enjoying this beautiful spring weather we're having. As our first order of business, I would like to resolve to approve the minutes of the Board of Education business meeting of March 18th, 2021.
Second.
Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
I would also like to announce that the Treasurer's Report for December 2020, January 2021, and February 2021 are available in the business office. And just briefly, before we move into presentations, I'd like to announce that our fifth board member, Jeanette Yetter, will be live streaming. She's out of the state, so there may be times that she participates via question through our district clerk, Ms. Boline. And now, presentations, Dr. Love.
Sure. So I'm going to begin by welcoming my colleague, Ms. Figuerella, up, and she'll join me in doing our budget presentation.
Tonight we're here to present the budget, the proposed budget. It's the second go-around. We had the similar presentation the last meeting, and now we've been given some new information, so that has been updated. So our first, I might first go at the budget. I always try to give around a kind of overview of what we're doing with the budget and how a budget works. It's our planned expenses and revenues for the year. It gives us an organizational plan, and it gives it in monetary terms so that we can have a living document that is a financial expression of our district's educational needs and priorities.
Good evening. So I'm just going to quickly recap some of the topics we spoke about during our last meeting, beginning with what our budget priorities are. And as we spoke about a couple weeks ago, certainly supporting our academic program, which includes adequately staffing and supporting our academic programs, our work around curriculum alignment and professional development, our priorities, our social emotional well-being. Obviously students, although many are back in school now, we have some students who will have effectively been out of school for 18 months before we resume school in September, and making sure that our budget can support the social emotional needs of all of our students. Technology continues to play a tremendous role within our school district. I think if there's one thing that remote instruction has taught us, it's how to more effectively leverage the technology we have. We want to continue to support that. Obviously, we're continuing to propose a fiscally responsible budget that meets both the district's needs and while acknowledging some of the struggles within the community and health and safety. Although we are hopeful we continue on the road to recovery and we can more fully reopen school in September, we do know that COVID will still be around and there'll still be a heightened sense of health and safety measures. Some of the variables and impacts on our current budget. Obviously, contractual expenses and benefits drive a majority of our budget. We just as recent as 2 days ago received our updated state aid runs, and we'll be sharing more information on that. Obviously, the tax cap limits our ability to levy the taxes we need to support our program, which then forces us to go into our reserves. And obviously, once our reserves are up, we can no longer balance our budget, and that's something that we obviously are trying to hold off as long as possible. Special education costs are always a variable. Students move in, students move out, and that's an expense we have to closely monitor both entering the school year and throughout the school year. Future facilities needs. In a couple weeks, we'll have KG&D here to do a more thorough report on our 5-year facilities plan. But that's something obviously we continue to focus on. Unfunded mandates is something that is always something that we acknowledge, and we're just sort of forced to find ways to support within our budgets. And there's been a lot of talk in the media about the federal stimulus funds, and we do have an amount, and we're going to talk a little bit later about some of the provisions that are in place or how that money can be used and what it can be used for. This is just a recap of our enrollment summary. Though our enrollment has decreased over the past couple of years, it's still a pretty healthy size. And interesting fact I found this year is we always track the number of students who leave the district versus the number of students who enroll in the district. And typically it's a wash. We may have 35 students leave throughout the year and 35 students move in throughout the year. This year was different because of, I think, the academic program we were able to offer, because of home sales in the area and rentals. We actually realized a net increase of over 60 students this school year. So 60 more students moved in to Putnam Valley than moved out this year, which is very abnormal for us. Just quickly, some of the academic highlights for this past year. Again, I couldn't be more proud of the work of our teachers, especially our elementary school teachers, who welcomed back all of their students 5 days a week beginning in September. It's very atypical for the region, and it came at a tremendous expense on our teachers, and they were able to do it. Simultaneous in-person and remote instruction. Certainly no one was ever taught to teach that way, and our teachers were able to quickly adapt and to find a way to support both in-person and remote students. Our International Baccalaureate program at the high school continues to grow. Our numbers for next year look tremendous, and we welcome our first IB diploma candidates this spring. Obviously, we're finishing up our facilities project, which includes the high school health and wellness center and the middle school learning commons. 8th grade is in its first year of Science for All. I was over there today, and it seems to be going extremely well. And a STEM lab and Science 21 space at the elementary school is in full swing. Some of the things we're looking forward to for next year: welcoming a full-time Learning Commons library media specialist at the middle school. We're changing a special at the elementary school to create an innovation lab. And 8th grade, we're moving to an electives program instead of an encore program. So 8th grade students will be afforded the opportunity to select electives that are of interest to them, as opposed to being rotated through pre-designated surveys of multiple courses. So that's something that's very exciting. Just a quick recap of our staffing. Some new positions: the library media specialist at the middle school, special education teacher at the high school. This is still schedule dependent. We have it in the budget, but until the schedule is sort of finalized or more completely worked out, we won't know for sure whether this position will need to be filled. We increased the technology special, or now the new innovation lab teacher. An existing teacher took the position, which raised it by 0.2. The good news is that teacher is also E&L certified, and that's a need within the district. We're exploring the possibility of an additional E&L certified teacher to support really all 3 buildings, or at their max capacity in terms of providing support to our E&L learners. We did eliminate the library clerk position, and we have many retirements: 7 teachers, 2 teaching assistants, 1 monitor, 2 bus drivers, and 2 office assistants. I'll turn it over to Jill.
Okay, so we're going to run through the numbers. And so right now, we're going to take a look at our revenues, what money we get in to support the budget. Our 21-22 proposed budget, we're going to earmark resources from our debt service reserve and from other local sources at $1.5 million. And our state and federal aid sources coming in are about 22% of our revenues at $11.6 million, which are in our real property tax levy to close the gap on the, to fulfill the tax cap calculation is $38.7 million. And to fill the gap the rest of the way, we've had to appropriate fund balance and reserves at $1.3 million. The total budget being $53 $1,196,449, a change of 2.48% over last year. In this slide, I'm going to explain where that money goes. So we have about 41.6% going towards classroom instruction, 22.8% go towards employee benefits, and 8% towards our general administrative support. 6.1% goes towards transportation, 4.9% towards support services. That would be like our psychologist, speech, and behavior, those types of support services, guidance. Operations and maintenance is 5.2% of our budget. Debt service is 6.1% of our budget. Media and tech support at 2.9% of our budget. And athletics and co-curricular expenses are about 2.4% of our budget. And overall, contributed to directly impact students, which are, the state allows us to go through what they consider like a coding of all of our expenses, and 77% of those codes within the budget directly impact students. So here's a summary of that information, so presented in percentage form, and these are the dollars. Okay, so for general support, this coming year, we're expecting 4.9% of our budget, $4.9 million of our budget, which is almost 4%, to go towards general support. The instructional portion of our expenses are $29.6 million, which is the largest part of our budget. An increase of about 1.75% over last year. Transportation, $3.2 million, which is about 4.4% over last year. Our benefits and debt service, $15.3 million, which is about 2.8% over last year. And again, our total budget being $53.1 million, or 2.48% over last year. We cannot see this slide from here, but this will be on our website, and you can certainly see it there. This gives a summary of all of the numbers that I just went over, but a little bit more in detail. And there's also a detailed budget on the website. We'll give a line by line. It's about 18 pages long of the amounts included in each one of these numbers as well. So that's available on our website. It's been posted on there as of today. And I welcome the community to look at that and give us some feedback. This is our three-part budget. We have to break the budget into three separate pieces: capital, administration, and program. That's required by the state. So 11% of our budget is considered capital, 12% administration, and 77% program. I'm going to talk a little bit about the impact on our with our tax levy towards the budget. So for 21-22, as I stated, we have a proposed tax levy about $38.7 million. Last year, that being almost $38.1 million, and the change in that is 1.96%. Okay, our allowable cap, which is determined through a formula, would have yielded us 2.1%, but the district is trying to do its best to keep those taxes under that tax cap in order to make ends meet. So 1.96% is what we decided that would be the feasible amount, and to stay under the cap as well. The rest came from the reserves in order to close that gap. In 2020-21, that's the current year, our Putnam Valley tax rate is $25.68 per $1,000 of assessment. In Carmel, it's $25.60. And then in Cortland, you're going to see a different type of number there. They're not equalized at 100% residents in the town of Cortland. So their tax rate looks quite different, but they're equalized at 1.56% of their actual value. So I can explain that further if someone would like some more information. Feel free to contact me. People that live in Cortland are familiar with it, but others may not be. So for 21-22, based on the current assessments and given this tax levy, the rate would be $26.10 in Putnam Valley. And again, these are only estimates because we don't have final assessments for the year. In Carmel, $26.19 per thousand, and Cortland, $1725.33. An average home in Putnam County right now, and this has been through the Putnam County Real Property Tax Office. I got this information. An average home in Putnam County, $353,000. And at that tax rate in Putnam Valley, the taxes would be approximately, school taxes would be approximately $9,182. In 2014-15, and you're going to see I have a chart on the next slide. In 2014-15, that was 8 years ago, the average home was $335,000, and our tax rate was $27.66 per thousand, which would have been $9,286, a difference of $84. So it's actually, if everything were to stay the same, trying to compare apples to apples, $84 less for that same home 8 years ago. And of course, the equalization rate, the assessed values, and the levy will make, the change in what that rate will come out to be. So here's the 8-year history. In 2014-15, our allowable tax cap, and I can see it here, was 0.85%. In other words, that's what we were allowed to increase the taxes by. The district chose 0.76% based on what we could use from our reserves and what we could raise in other revenues. So as you can see, each year we stayed below the allowable tax cap. So here 0.81, we went to a negative 0.9. 0.10, which is incredible that this is how low they expected us to go. We even reduced it by more, utilizing our reserves to try and mitigate some of those taxes that were going to be out there for residents, so minus 1.3. And this year, again, 2.1 down to 1.96. We're still under the cap. So if anybody has any questions on this chart before I move forward, or comments about the tax cap. Okay. So I wanted to go through the formula a little bit to help people understand the tax cap. It's not an easy formula. I tried to make it as easy as possible in this chart here. So it starts with the prior year's tax levy. We take the prior year's tax levy, we apply a allowable tax growth factor, which the state tells us these are the value of your homes in your town. You're allowed to grow your taxes by 1.0008. It's different for every town. So that yielded us an additional $30,408 that we could add to the prior year's levy. Then they allow us to apply the CPI. The CPI is the same for everybody across the state, all school districts, 1.23%. That yielded us an additional $455,000 added to the tax levy. Then we can take the what they call the capital tax levy. So that's the total of our principal and interest payments, less what we're going to get back in building aid. And we take last year's versus this year's and the difference between the two, and we add that to the tax levy, $284,348. Those three figures, the $30,000, the $455, and the $284, get added to the $38 million number from last year. This is our new allowable tax cap, which is 2.1% greater than the prior year. Again, our tax cap used in the budget is 1.96%, just slightly lower, about $25,000 lower than what we were allowed to. So we did not go to the full amount that we would have been allowed. Does anybody have any questions on that? Okay, now I'm going to go over a little bit about the funding sources. In other words, the state aid that's come to us in the last couple of days, the information that we've gotten. So our foundation aid was increased to by about $700,000. Okay, and within that $700,000, we want to say that that is an annual revenue source. It can only be used by our general fund. It only comes to the general fund to be used. It supports our instructional, administrative, and operations budget. And we can also use that to offset any use of reserve funds that we may have already injected into the budget so that we don't have to use as much of the reserve. We're able to, reserve more of that if we need to. So it's there for us to use, but within the general fund. Now, everybody's hearing also about what they're calling federal stimulus funds. And our district is earmarked to receive $2.5 million. That does not come in as a revenue source. It is an application process, it's an approval process that we have to go through. It is similar to the grants that we get in our special aid fund. It's only one-time funding. In other words, we're not going to be able to sustain that through the years. It's not going to be an increase to our aid every single year. It's also going to be based on certain criteria. So we're going to get reimbursed for some of our qualifying expenses. 20% of those expenses have to be COVID-related learning loss and applied in that way. Other things excuse me, we can use it for our instructional spaces, evidence-based interventions, summer learning, enrichment, social emotional well-being, health and safety. There's a whole laundry list of things, but they're basically related to learning loss that happened during, COVID. Okay, so the additional funding consideration. So going back to using this slide as a guide also, the additional funding considerations that we plan on using towards the additional foundation aid would be the E&L support, the middle school studio art .2 FTE, the elementary Mandarin program K-2, the middle school Mandarin program, I think grade 7, correct? Grade 7. Financing for a new 66 passenger bus, and classroom furniture replacement, some of our older classroom furniture to be more innovative furniture for our students. So these are some of the things that we presented at the last meeting that would have been considerations if we had an influx of aid. And these are a couple of them that we were able to fit into the budget based on that new aid that we got. The federal stimulus funds, again, things we could use it for: summer recovery, reentry program, summer E&L support program, maybe reinforcing our AIS program or reinstating our instructional support positions, and some of our facilities projects based on whatever the architects are going to present in June on with our 5-year plan. We may be able to use some of that federal stimulus funds towards that. Does anybody have any questions regarding the aid and the stimulus funds before we move to the next slide?
The stimulus funds are the things that we can use that money for. We've not yet made a final determination to do so in specific issues.
Yeah, it's just some of the things that we're considering right now. We have all the districts have received memos regarding that, and we've been given a number that we think we're going to get. And until we get final word on that, we really don't know for sure that that's the exact amount that we're getting, and we don't know what we'll get approved for using either. There is a list that we have to get approved for.
Okay.
We have to apply for it. There's a process. So before we finish, I just want to go over what a contingent budget is. I'd like to remind everyone that in situations of a failed school budget, the board is able to decide whether they want to propose that same budget again or adopt a newly revised budget. And the reason I'm talking about this tonight also is because we're in hopes that we're going to be able to adopt the budget that we're presenting. The board would have to adopt a contingent budget if the budget were to fail a second time. And under a contingent budget, there are a number of expenses that would have to, could automatically be removed, such as certain types of equipment, unless they were for health and safety reasons. And for us, a contingent budget right now would mean removing $745,000 from the budget. We would have to revert back to our prior year's tax levy whenever a budget fails. That's part of the rules. We have to revert back and remove that type of expense, which definitely would impact programs, personnel, and other types of expenses throughout the budget. And this, I just wanted to say that, when we put the budget together, it is a collaboration between the board, the community, the parents, the staff, the administration, and the students, to help bring this all together and develop a budget that is fiscally responsible as well as academically sound. This is our voter information. The school budget vote will be held on May 18th. At the elementary school, there are 2 trustee seats available on the ballot. Absentee ballot is over, or we're still?
Available after April 19th.
Okay. So absentee ballot information is available now on the website, but I'm sorry, say that again, April 19th? Applications for running, for absentee ballots. And for both, right? Okay, for both. For both the candidates and the absentee ballots, April 19th is the deadline. So if you need more information about that, because that was kind of unclear.
No, it's not. No. Excuse me. No.
The candidate information, candidate petitions are due by 5 p.m. on April 18th. Absentee ballot applications can be accepted starting on the 19th of April up until 5 days before the election.
Okay, I'm sure that we just
We'll say that again.
confused a bunch of people. We'll have to say it again at the end. For more information, you can contact Maureen Bellino, she's our district clerk, or myself if it pertains to the budget, and my email address is there. Our phone number is available on the website. I can be contacted anytime, any day of the week, between 8 and 4 for questions. It's just our business office staff. I wanted to say thank you to them again for all the work that they do. I can't do it without them, and I really appreciate them very much. So need to mention it anytime we talk about the business office. Thank you.
So I have a few questions. They're a little micro, I think, but or things to point out. The increase on, if it's right. One second. The 0.96% difference on instructional no, not that one, sorry. That's the largest part. It's part of the $14.8 million for the budget, which is a small increase, and a lot of that is savings from retirements, correct?
Yes.
But then there's, and then I want to get a little bit of context for instructional media. It's up by almost 12%. I'm assuming that a lot of that has to do with...
Right. So involved in the media line is the new librarian. And then we had cut the technology budget and all of the department budgets by $50,000 last year in order to inject some money into the other parts of the budget. And with technology being what it is and what our needs are right now, we did add $50,000 back to that district budget. We didn't add it back to the other department budgets.
And the 4% on transportation, a lot of that has to do with the new contract, correct?
The bus You're talking about the bus?
Yep.
Yes. Yes.
I've lost my slide, hold on. So can I ask a question? And I was paying attention, but I still have a question. So the foundation aid increase actually goes into, is used for expenses, and it becomes part of the budget. And is it interchangeably the same as what we've called as state aid? I mean, is the
There are several different types of aid that we
Okay.
receive called state aid, and foundation aid
Okay.
is just one of them.
Okay, okay. So these things that I'm on the slide, reading glasses, 17. So these additions are being, and some of them are just 0.2 or small amounts, and I know we also get a lot of BOCES aid on the Mandarin program. These are now part of the budget. That's not something grant-oriented that will go away in 5 years. This is now part of our expenses.
Correct. So the items in the block on the top under foundation aid are items that were added back into the budget this year. I guess just as a reminder to everyone, last year we were obviously forced to cut our budget in January, pre-COVID, before we even knew what that was. And then we went back and made a second round of cuts, and we cut another $600,000 out of our general fund last school year during the pandemic in anticipation for what we knew would be a fiscally challenging this school year. So this new influx in aid has allowed us to restore some of those programs and initiatives that were cut out for this school year. The foundation aid piece is able to do a small piece of it. Obviously, that federal stimulus money, which is again a one-shot injection of money, we can use it over 3 years, but then it's gone. That's not the kind of monies we would want to spend on staffing or other long-term expenses. So we tried to bullet items that we thought in the next 1 to 3 years could be extremely beneficial while also being considered an approved expense under that federal stimulus.
And that $700,000, the 4 bullet points that are on the slide before this, we are electing to use it for all 4 of those things.
Correct.
Ms. Getter has a question. She thinks she may have answered it, but is the foundation a consideration of this items already included in the numbers that you are presenting?
They are now, yes.
They are, the answer is
Yes.
I can't hear well with the mask on. I don't quite understand why that is, but I can, so excuse me.
For curiosity's sake, you mentioned that we had 60 new students, positive new students into the district. Do you have a sense for how many of them ended up being in person or hybrid as opposed to staying remote? I'd imagine the reason they would have come in would have been, or some of the reason would have been, that we actually were in person.
Yeah, I mean, it would be speculation, but I agree with you. I think a vast majority of them would have immediately resumed in-person instruction. I think a majority of them were elementary school age students. So elementary school students were afforded the opportunity, 100% of them, to be in school 5 days a week all year. So I think that was where we saw the largest influx of new students, although they certainly did span all 3 buildings.
And I wonder, we still, although not as much as maybe 20 or 30 years ago, but we still have in some of our lake communities a seasonal population, people that live in the city or in other areas and come up for the spring. And as I've heard has happened throughout Long Island and New Jersey, some people opted to have those homes be their primary home during the budget. Do we know if some of that figured in, or are we guessing, or are these 60 students here to stay?
We know of some students that had a second home that enrolled into school, but I think a majority of the new students coming in were either people selling their second home at a premium given the real estate market,
Okay.
or renting their second home to families, and
Okay.
those families enrolling their students into the school.
Okay.
That's certainly been our experience, more so than someone who's sort of temporarily educating the students here short term, with a plan to return to the city or somewhere else long-term.
All right, great, thank you.
Can you once again clarify, I know I ask you to do this every time, employee benefits, what is included in employee benefits? I'll leave a cupcake.
You may step aside, Dr. Left.
That's an easy one. Sorry, yes, the employee benefits would be what we provide employees, such as health care insurance, dental, and the pension plans, social security tax, Medicare tax, workers' compensation, unemployment expenses, and I believe that's the total. That's all of them. There's 2 different pension plans, one for teachers, one for non-teaching.
Which is, you can't divorce them from other parts. You cannot provide one part of the instructional services without having those benefits for employees,
Correct.
state and federally mandated.
So the pension plans, contributed to the increase in our budget, also about $165,000. And the medical benefits went up about 3%. So those were some increases we saw.
Now, is the maybe this is more a financial thing, the investment thing, the pension plan, I would imagine, based on, it's the state decides what that percentage is going to be as far as whatever the contribution will be. But that is tied to how they invest.
That's correct.
And it is over a certain number of periods that comes up with a formula as to what that percentage is going to be, or whatever that increase or amount will be. And if the stock market is doing better, the percentage typically remains lower than if the stock market is doing worse, correct?
True.
But at the beginning of our situation with COVID, stock market was not doing well. It's come back, so we might, we're hoping, based on where we are right now, that the numbers might self-regulate and may be less of an impact.
They could. We might not see as large a jump, I think, as they had originally anticipated. Where we did see some losses in revenue were in our interest earnings, in our revenues, significant losses there for us. And then also in the use of our facilities, because we were unable to use them. We did not see the PAC rentals in the Performing Arts Center. We weren't able to use that space and realize the revenue from there. So, there were some impacts on our revenue side as well as some savings from last year, but, we hope to be able to regain that next year.
And then also, this job we've already asked, she apologized, did the cost of how much of equipment is optional?
There are no optional benefits. What we do offer is for a health insurance plan, if they don't need the health insurance plan, like a buyout sort of plan, instead of taking a full family plan. But there's nothing that's optional. They would all be mandatory. It's part of their contractual obligations also.
I'm going to give Jill a break, and this is a Dr. Left question. So I know you and I have spoken about Mandarin in terms of, is it effective bang for the buck, so to speak? And I wasn't aware of how much it's supported through BOCES and state aid. So for the public, can you, in case anybody's sitting there going, why Mandarin at home, can you sort of convince them like you convinced me?
Sure. So the Mandarin program was a pilot program we began at the elementary school a couple of years ago in partnership with BOCES, and they covered the first year of the expense. And the teaching assistant pushed into then our kindergarten classes, just 30 minutes once a week, rotated through the classes, and worked with the students, not just teaching them pieces of Mandarin language, songs, but about culture and sort of a well-rounded view. China. So that program we thought was a huge success the first year, and we continue to support it into first grade. Actually, no, the second year was last year, and we were unable to support it, and the Putnam Valley Education Foundation stepped up and supported the program on behalf of the school district last school year. So we were able to continue it throughout this 2021 school year. And now, again, we were faced with whether to continue it, allowing that first cohort to continue into second grade. And it was something that was on the fence. And then we think it's something that at least I'm recommending we support with this additional state aid. It's a program that we've received nothing but positive feedback from parents. I think I'm looking forward to getting back to sort of the celebrations and the events we were able to have the first year, inviting the parents in, letting the students sing and sort of show off everything they've learned. And I think it'll be interesting to see how profound of an impact it has on the Mandarin program that becomes available as a new language to students in the middle school. So we do purchase it through BOCES. That means half of all the monies we spend, more than half, we get back in terms of aid. So really, to support that program is costing us a net of under $15,000.
And the view is to expand it then to third and fourth going forward?
I mean, that's my hope. It's obviously going to be something that's going to be budget dependent.
Okay.
The Putnam Valley Education Foundation was willing to chip in again this year to keep it going, but obviously the expectation can't be that they're going to fund our academic program every year. I told them that if we got the additional funding that we were hoping to, which we have, that we wouldn't need their assistance. But it's something that at least that group felt strongly enough about to continue to pitch in and help support. And as long as the monies are available, I would love to continue to support it. Again, in partnership with BOCES, receiving the aid back and letting the student interest grow and seeing what happens when it becomes an optional language for students in 7th grade.
And is it running in the elementary school the way it does in the middle school? Is there somebody remote on a screen?
No, someone's direct. A teaching assistant, Mandarin speaking teaching assistant from BOCES comes to our
Okay.
classes and works directly with the teachers and with the
Okay.
students. They embed it into what the students are learning as much as possible. So in kindergarten, if they're learning about colors, in art class, Mandarin teacher may come in and talk about colors in Mandarin. If they're counting, alphabet, they try to reinforce the same type of learning that's happening in the classroom. So if they're talking about communities in 2nd grade, the Mandarin song may be about communities, or they'll have a conversation about symbols that represent communities in Mandarin. So it's really thought out. Our teachers plan with the Mandarin teaching assistant to make it as embedded into our existing curriculum as possible.
And sticking with the elementary school, since it's sounds like it's an enrichment program, it's not per se a language, because there's no requirement to provide a language any younger. If we run into some budget difficulties in the future, the world broke last March. We never know what the next week is going to bring. It's something that we can stop at pretty much any time.
Correct. I mean, it was out of this year's budget before the Education Foundation put it in. It was on the fence for next year's budget, so it's something that unfortunately I think it's a great program, but like you said, it's a nice to have and not a must have.
Right.
The cost of it makes it acceptable as a nice to have, but if the funds aren't there, then obviously it's not something that we're required
And you said
to.
under 15,000? Is that what
Correct.
you said? Okay. And then let's move that to the middle school. That's different. That it's presented as a language.
Correct. So in 7th grade, students have the option to take Mandarin as their language,
Okay.
which is now getting into graduation requirements. And that we've traditionally had Spanish, and we were really looking to have a second language. This is something Dr. Wills had brought into the middle school several years ago. This is sort of the hybrid type of instruction that all students underwent this year. That's how this class operates in a normal year. We have in the past used that same Mandarin teaching assistant to physically come to the classroom to support our students, but primarily the instruction is being delivered through a computer from a certified Mandarin teacher out of Orange Ulster BOCES.
And that one, after 7th and 8th grade, they'll have a 1-year language credit towards their high school requirement.
Correct. After 8th grade, if they stay with it, they'll have their checkpoint A, which is their first language credit.
Okay. And once again, we hope we continue it. But if we did not, the students would need to pick another language and start in high school for that.
Correct. If the interest is there, we'll continue to grow that program. Eventually reach the tipping point where we would look to hire our own Mandarin teacher.
Okay.
But it has to be, the enrollment has to drive it. COVID definitely put a big dip in the Mandarin program, so we took a step back but there seems to be at least a large amount of interest in the incoming seventh graders. So we're hoping it'll refuel the program. And again, I think it'll be really interesting when those elementary school students who will have been exposed to the language since kindergarten get to seventh grade. I think it'll be really interesting to see how many of them then continue as an official language.
I mean, so I don't know about the other board members, but I'm hearing, or I'm interpreting, that as a board, by adding it back into the seventh grade for this year, we're committing to 2 years, because we wouldn't want
Correct.
to only give them 1 year of the instruction.
But the
At this-
students understand when they sign up in seventh grade, they're making a
Making
2-year
Two-year
commitment.
commitment,
They
okay.
can't take it in seventh grade and then drop and go to Spanish in eighth grade.
Okay, but we might, if budgetary constraints make them have to make that choice come ninth grade. If we say we can't continue it, or
At
are
the-
we committing for this cohort to commit until, for all 4 years?
No, so the commitment from our seventh graders academically would be for seventh and eighth grade. Budgetarily would be for us to support that cohort through those 2 years. But from a
Right, okay.
budgetary impact, there's not a big difference, because if they leave Mandarin and go to Spanish, then we may have to hire a point
Okay.
2 in Spanish. So it's sort of
We're still offering languages to that
Yeah.
number of students? Okay.
correct.
Okay.
Jill, could you maybe elaborate on the capital column on the detailed budget? I guess my primary question is, what impact, if any, in a general budget sense, has our new construction had on our budget that we've not planned for, or has everything fit within the plan that we did for the capital expenditure for our project?
In the budget for next year, there is not monies put aside for use in the capital project that we're finishing now. You're referring to that capital? So, no, there isn't any monies in there. The only monies we ended up using from our general fund towards the capital project that's just finishing up is like our abatement that we have to go through BOCES to contract to get the work done, because we get aid back on that. So the asbestos abatement was really the only expense. Some of the expense for our construction manager, we took from the general fund, but that was from last year's budget, not from the current year's budget.
Right, so I'm looking at this coming year, and there's $6.8 million in the capital budget.
So the capital budget is not, it's capital, the operations and maintenance is all capital.
Right.
Then also, I believe the debt service is considered capital. There's this, after the current year's column, there is the 3 columns broken down between program administration and capital, and if you follow that through the detailed budget, it will explain exactly which of those expenditure items are considered capital, administrative, or program.
I just don't want somebody looking at, if they ask the 3-year history and they look at the detail in the capital, that they think there's something new being constructed.
No, the capital portion of the budget has nothing to do with the capital project itself.
Thank you.
Not so much a question or a comment. I'm not sure all the public knows, Dr. Luff, that since I'm on the board, which is almost 12 years, we've had triple increase, 3 times as many E&L students in the district as there were 12 years ago. So when we see a focus of increasing E&L, that number is growing. Do you want to speak a little to that for people who may not know, or?
Sure, that's definitely been a fact, and it's an increasing number of students each year, where we typically at one point had E&L teachers split between buildings, E&L teachers teaching both gen ed and E&L classes. We've exhausted our E&L teachers. We've incentivized our general education teachers to get their bilingual certifications so they can handle some of the accommodations for E&L students within their classroom without adding those students to the caseload of our E&L teachers. So we've exhausted all of those avenues, and now we're getting very tricky in terms of services during lunch and services split between periods, and I think we have officially exhausted every avenue of using our existing staff to meet the mandates. So the mandates are determined by the state depending upon how the students score on the NYSA slot. And that score determines the level of services they receive, how much is push into a class, how much is pull out independent services, and it varies year by year. As that exam is administered, some students may do well, some students may do poorly, and again, it's somewhat of a moving target depending upon how students score to determine our E&L services. But we are definitely at the tipping point of what we're able to provide and have already exhausted all of the other ways in which we can support these students with our existing staff.
And the state guidelines are prescriptive to the minute, from what I
Yes.
understand. So,
Correct.
you know, it's not just push in, but it's how many minutes an emerging student gets, how many minutes a commanding student receives. It's very prescriptive.
Correct. And whether that service is provided while pushing into a class or pulling the student out to a sort of a personal session.
Okay, great. Great, great, great. I'm good. Anybody else on the board? Oh. Do we want to open up to public contribution on the budget now?
If we
Or
have
would that
public
confuse
questions.
everybody?
Oh,
I
yeah,
thought
come
I
up,
s-
just come up, Jess.
Oh, it's just Jess. Jess, I didn't recognize you with your mask on. Okay. You look like a student athlete, actually, is what you look like.
Hi. So yeah, I just came from practice. I'm sorry.
Jess, can you introduce yourself? I'm sorry for people who might be watching.
I'm Jessica Walsh. I'm a senior here at Putnam Valley High School. I'm the student board representative. So yeah, I just have a question regarding the Mandarin, since we're hoping that it continues through middle and high school, or is it going to be prepared to take into account high school as well, especially with the IB program? Because I know that there's IB Mandarin classes, like that exists. I don't know if we're going to be able to prepare for that and have the money for that.
So the intention is certainly that if there's enough interest in the Mandarin program that allows us to hire our own Mandarin teacher, that would afford us the ability to offer Mandarin through the IB program. IB will not recognize the way in which Mandarin is delivered in that hybrid model. It'll be interesting to see whether that stance changes after the last year. But we did apply and try to get them to approve that as an IB course. We were going to send the teacher on the other end of the computer to get trained, and that was something they would not recognize at this time. If that changes, then that would be awesome. If not, we would certainly, there is a tipping point where it would be more fiscally responsible to hire your own teacher than to contract it out. So if we reach that point, then we would certainly ask that teacher to get the IB training and then be able to support those students continuously. Currently, students who start with Mandarin are forced to switch to French ab initio if they wish to pursue an IB diploma.
Okay,
And that's definitely an issue for some students who start that way.
okay. Great question, Jess, thank you.
Ms. Yetter has another question. She said she notes that we have a .2 middle school studio art noted in the funding considerations. Are there any additional .2s being included for the 21-22 school?
It's not an additional point two, it's a part-time teacher who is going up an additional section is the point two. So it's not a teacher who's getting a point two above and beyond. It's a part-time teacher, say a point six, who's moving to a point eight. That'll be teaching that class.
And is it the high school studio art teacher that'll be moving down to the middle school or
It's
no?
our middle school art
Art
teacher
teacher.
will be teaching it.
I want to say, and I think I might have said it to Mr. McCarty and Dr. Payne when they did their presentation, I really like the 8th grade mirroring high school choices, giving them certainly not unlimited numbers of electives because our budget can support that, but giving them that ability to choose, to begin to look at interests, to really mirror what happens in the high school because it's just one more prep step so to speak, so.
Yeah, it's a great way to transition our middle school kids, prepare them for the high school where they start to have some choice. They've really never before in their academic career been asked
Right.
what they want to learn. So 8th grade, at least for half the year, they'll likely have to do health for half the year. That's a state requirement. But the other semester, they would have the opportunity to choose an elective.
That's great. No, that's a nice addition to the process.
It's okay. You're welcome.
Are there any additional point twos?
I don't believe there's any additional point twos built into the budget. The only one that I know of is our CPSE chairperson. That's something that's been in there for several years. But it's not even really, it's not an extra class, it's additional responsibilities. I'm looking across the room at my colleagues to see if they know of any others. Correct, yeah, that's been funded that way for many years. Did I forget one?
No, she's clarifying. She has her clarifying look on.
Exactly, it's clarifying.
Forget
So
everything Dr.
there-
Luff just said.
I'm Dr. Doherty. There are times when, and I budget for it in my federal funds, either Title I or 611 or 619 grants, when if we have an extra reading group that we can't fit into somebody's schedule or something like that. So point twos do come up, or if we have students that move in that have mandates that we just couldn't anticipate for. So I consciously budget in our grants, making sure that we have monies set aside for that in case we do have to add a point two during the school year for a student with a disability or a student needs a specific service. Does that make sense? Okay, thank you.
And just for anybody who's wondering what a point two is, it isn't this new thing. It's an additional amount of time that a full-time or part-time teacher would be working and then compensated for.
So despite the fact we don't have any point twos included in our budget, there is money earmarked
In the
if the need
event it's
arises
needed.
throughout the year, correct?
Any other question? How's Ms. Yetter doing? Everyone else? And do we decide now that we're going to keep that item in the new business and adopt the budget this evening? Isn't that, it is a
No.
new business, isn't it? No.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in there as a business item. So I think after the presentations, once we open it up for business, then we can make a motion to move it or keep it,
Okay,
whatever you guys prefer.
great. Okay,
Any other questions?
no?
All right, thank you all.
Thank you, Jill.
Thank you. Jill. And I want to add, I love your picture of your staff, Jill. I want to add my thanks. I know you actually, we say budget season starts around January. You know it starts in October. And you look at every dollar and consider every contingency, and it is extremely appreciated by this board.
I think October is generous. She already told me I can't spend any money in the 2022-23 school year.
Ah, okay, so she's done, so we're good, okay. All right, so now I'd like to open it up to our student representatives who are already doing a little you go first thing.
Go together.
You know this is my favorite part of the board meeting.
Everything's your favorite part of the board
No,
meeting.
not at all.
Not budget, not budget.
Hi, everyone. So first, just regarding the previous presentation, last time it was presented, I brought up concerns about the technology class being eliminated, particularly within digital citizenship, but I was assured by Dr. Luff that that would still be maintained in the elementary school's education regarding technology. So yeah, that just wanted to reiterate for somebody at home who was also wondering the same thing. So to get into it, the high school is back full-time starting this week. My personal experience and from the people that I've been asking, we've really enjoyed it, and I think that it's been really beneficial to everyone being able to focus and, you know, just being able to see people like fully. Like I'm walking into school and I'm like, oh, you're a freshman. I haven't seen you ever. I didn't even know you went here. So yeah, that's been really nice, and it feels a lot more normal. So yeah, the sports are back in session. I have a game this Saturday. I know spring sports are starting in 2 weeks, I believe. Really excited for that. I know a lot of spring sports are also practicing individually, like as an off-season type thing.
And just fall sports are going on now. It's as if
Yes.
that's not confusing.
Yes,
So,
fall sports
okay.
are officially going on. There are like unofficial spring sports just to prep
Right.
going in. So yeah, I don't know if you want to talk about the play, right?
Thank you.
So of course, my expert of area of expertise, that's where I was going, is the musical. And so last week, I think, was the Voices from the Pandemic came out. So that was a lot of fun, and it was great to kind of get the students back into theater. And it was a lot of freshmen actually showed up. I think we had a couple, but it's good to see some new faces like showing up and showing interest in something that Dr. Macera has been doing for a long time. I think a long time is 20 years this year. Woo. So we thought we were going to do a big show, but you know. And then the Drowsy Chaperone, which is the musical. We've been doing practices with the band all week. So I don't know. This is like a little rundown of what I do. So it's really great to kind of be students partaking in an activity together again, especially one that such like a large group comes together, even though it's a bit smaller this year. And I can't really speak for Justice's sports and things, but it's nice to see the people who aren't so inclined to do a lot of athletic things to kind of come in and really show what they really enjoy in theater.
So speaking on the freshman bit, I'm kind of really concerned about freshman involvement in clubs and activities. I think that because a lot of them were not in school, they weren't really exposed to a lot of things, and I feel like there's going to be a lot of loss of interest in these things. So I am concerned for some clubs on that, but I think that exposing it is, getting into the school is good, and next year maybe reinforcing like, hey, come join a club would be really good. And I feel like a lot of kids are trying out new sports because they're only 5 weeks. The season's only 5 weeks long, so I feel like people are trying new things, which I think that is good. And yeah, that's about it on the like extracurricular activities. Did you want to talk about
I mean, you can make a statement if you want.
So yeah, we had a talk with Dr. Luft during the school week. I know that, and you can correct me, I know that he's been trying to push for vaccines being available within the school. I asked just about everybody that I ran into, even if I didn't know them. And I was like, hey, would you get the vaccine if it was made available at the school? I would say about like 70% said yes, so I think that's really good. I know that some people have their opinions on the vaccine, and they have their like misgivings, and that's fine. But I do think that it would be worth pushing for and worth doing. Furthermore, I know Parker can speak on this about private schools, colleges particularly, are requiring vaccines before you're allowed on campus.
Wow.
And even if it's not just seniors, but also the juniors are probably going to need the vaccine before they go into college.
Even to visit, we think, or to be on campus, or primarily to when they enroll and move in?
The colleges are actually requiring it even for visitors,
Okay.
some of them.
Yeah, I just, this past weekend, I went to visit a couple colleges who are allowing tours, and we called a couple colleges ahead of time and asked if we could just walk around the campus. I went on Easter, so nobody was there. So I was allowed to walk around the campus, and I just drove around to see everything. That was really nice. So yeah.
And under 30 and 16 only happened this week, so up to now, colleges couldn't have required that because
Yeah.
it wasn't available. But
Yeah,
now-
I just got my vaccine yesterday, and Parker just got his today. So, yeah, I think that another thing is that for kids our age getting the vaccine, A, they're really hard to find because everybody's trying to get their vaccine, and B, for us to have access to them, I've noticed that there's this trend of us having to go like quite outside the area. Like the first one that I found was like, oh, not me, my family members helped me. The first one that we found was like an hour and a half away, and then we were able to find one closer that was 45 minutes away, which was good. But, you know, still being 45 minutes away isn't very accessible for some people. So, yeah.
Parker, I wanted to say congratulations on your performance in Voices from the Pandemic. You want to talk a little bit about, so people at home maybe that haven't seen it know how to access it and how that went?
Of course. So the Voice from the Pandemic was in lieu of a fall drama. We got some student-written shows along with some that Dr. Massera wrote himself. And I was in Be Happy, which was written by Tree Thorpe. He's a junior at the high school. And another one that was, I'm blanking on that one. I'm sorry to whoever wrote it. So if you would like to see them, if you go to the PVCSD page and you go to the arts category, it should be the first video there above some older pictures that I saw that I was in. So if you click on that, and it should just come up as like a normal video file on your computer, almost as like a YouTube link or something. I'm not as tech savvy.
I will say I had to watch it in small pieces.
Yeah.
It was pretty intense. I was really amazed at the power and the depth of your performances, all of the students. So it's a little hard to watch straight through and really get it. So my advice would be to do one at a time.
Do your time.
Yeah.
You can definitely pick them into pieces. You do what my mom did, was watch my scenes and then pause for a while until I told her to watch the rest of them.
Good mom.
But it's definitely, it's really, I hate to use the word, but it's kind of deep. It's really a lot of, because a lot of the pieces are written by students, and it's what people have been going through for the last year, and it's definitely been rough for a lot of people, but it was the ability to creatively express yourself both by writing a scene and by acting in it. So I enjoyed it. I'm sure the people who wrote it enjoyed it, and then I'm sure Dr. Massera and Jen definitely enjoyed
But it was
putting it together.
positive too. I mean, it wasn't just about, oh, the pandemic, my life is ruined, kind of
Yeah.
like it was the kind of thing I would expect high school students to be feeling in and out of a pandemic. So I think it was more universal than pandemic focused. I didn't get that it only had to do with this 1 year in the pandemic. I got it that it had to do with life. So it was really well done. I recommend it to anybody to watch.
Thank you. I definitely say it's worth the watch. Yeah, I don't know if you heard that. Jess asked if it was an accurate representation of how the student body is feeling. I'd say it's pretty accurate. It's a lot of students had a rough time for the end of last year. I can certainly say that the class of 2020 had a rough time, and then we ourselves have been struggling, but we're pulling along, and so is the rest of Putnam Valley. So I think that it's definitely an accurate representation of how all of the student body is feeling, and how everyone's feeling, because it's a lot of them are like that, the light at the end of the tunnel almost, where it's like these great things have happened, and that's kind of changed their perspective during the pandemic.
And for both of you, I just want to say I have gotten a lot of feedback through emails or my supermarket conversations about how active and involved you've both been at board meetings. So we will certainly celebrate you at another time, but I just want to tell you that people are saying that. And specifically, Parker, people were really touched by you talking about loving being at the middle school and seeing full rooms. And because a lot of people said, I had to tell you, I figured all seniors and all high school kids wanted to stay home on their couches and go to school. And hearing from you that that really was not the case, a lot of people were impressed by that. I know I was, so I want to thank you.
I can tell you my mom got emails from people saying that.
Your mom got what, email?
Yeah, they're like, because I didn't even know that people were emailing her, telling her that, like, oh my God, he's out there talking about stuff. And I was like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, we're a small town. You people can't hide. So I just wanted to say that, but it really made it, I think the assumption was, well, wouldn't a senior want to stay home in their pajamas all day and go to school if they could? And the fact that that's not really the case. So that's great. Thank you.
And just anecdotally on the vaccine front, just I was down at the Westchester County Center yesterday, and I was able to get Curia vaccine schedule yesterday, and it was filled with young folks. It was, and because it's a Pfizer plant, you can go down to 16. With the Moderna, it's not under 16, so you're kind of limited to that particular vaccine at this time. But I think as supply happens, especially over the summer, I think it's going to be a lot easier to get those appointments.
Yeah, I was going to say, especially during the summer, I think people are going to want to get out, and I think more people getting the vaccine would be highly beneficial.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just one additional clarification, for those in the community that want to hear Voices Within the Pandemic, if you go to the Putnam Valley internet site, go to the high school page. It's right in the middle of the high school page. There's a button, and you'll see a picture, and you just click on it, and you can watch. It is unbelievable. So it's Putnam Valley Central School District, PV, I can't even do that.
pvcsd.org.
Then you just click on the high school button, and right there in the middle, you'll see it.
Mr. Cohen also just told me that for people at home, your primary physicians, your doctors, if you call them, you can get put on a waiting list for a vaccine. So they're starting to get waiting lists for that too. So yeah.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Make sure you finish all your homework.
Good luck in your season, Jess. And is the music, have I lost track? The musical is still happening.
Correct.
Drowsy chaperone,
Drowsy Chaperone.
Okay.
by the end of the month.
Are you in that as well, Parker? Yes. Excellent.
That's why we're in here, because they're all
Excellent.
set up on the stage in the back.
Right, okay. All right, as I say every week, Dr. Left, tough act to follow, my friend, tough act to follow.
As usual, they stole all my good material.
Excellent.
I should start going first. Check.
Don't listen to him, Jessica.
It means I got to talk less, so it'll go quicker. So, as Jess and Parker noted, we're in our phase 2 of the reopening. Welcome back to our new students. I have some of the numbers that I'm sure they didn't have to share. So, just as of today in our elementary school, we have 472 in-person learners and 54 students still all remote. In our middle school, we now have 460 students in every day, and 50 students are all remote. And in our high school, 425 students in each day, 122 students still all remote. So those are drastic shifts, especially at the middle school and the high school, compared to what was about 170 students each day at the high school and 210 or so students each day at the middle school. So we're happy to have eliminated the hybrid schedule and to have also welcomed back really 52% of our all remote learners, many of which have been home all school year, opted to return to school.
That's great.
So
Dr.
it was-
Luft, is there a conjecture as to the high school number? Is it a lot that has to do with athletics or depending on year? Do we know more detail on that?
Yeah, I think a majority of those students are either athletes avoiding quarantine or seniors saying, I'm almost done.
No, and
I think that represents the majority of the high school students. Although I have to say, for as depressing as it was just a few months ago, to see 4, 5 of the senior parking spots with cars in them, I just noticed today when I was leaving the building, a vast majority of those senior parking spots now have cars in them, and that's something that's just great to see. I think every senior should really have the opportunity to enjoy the spring of their senior year. Just to speak a little bit about what Jess had mentioned, I've been working with the Department of Health in Putnam County and really pushing them to make the Pfizer vaccine more readily available for our high school students. Right now, it's the only one that is accessible to students age 16 and 17, and it happens to be the one vaccine that Putnam County does not typically offer. I know there's complications in terms of storage and diluting it, but again, what we're seeing is the majority of spread occurring within that same age group. So it seems to make sense that that's the age group in which we should be focusing on getting vaccinated. So I had approached Jess and asked her if she'd be interested in to get a pulse. I thought the more data we had to say, listen, I have 120 students in Putnam Valley High School that are ready to be vaccinated tomorrow. Figure out how to get the vaccines here, and let's make this happen. So just looking for some data behind what I believe is a great deal of interest amongst 16, 17, and 18-year-olds to be able to drive the county towards taking the next step in offering Pfizer. I did find out today that the state is currently only allocating Pfizer to the state-run facilities. So the good news is it gives us a direction to point students who are looking to be vaccinated. Obviously, the closest state-run facility is Westchester Community Center? County Center? That didn't sound right. Westchester County Center. But there are other ones. I think Jess had gone off to Kingston, and there's other ones around, or New Paltz. Where'd you go? Armonk. Armonk? How'd I get Kingston and Armonk? I knew there was a Kingston one. Whatever. So I'm happy to provide, there's a couple of things I talked to the Department of Health about just this afternoon. One, obviously 18-year-olds can receive Moderna or Johnson & Johnson. And I'm working with the Department of Health to create a list of 18-year-olds who are interested. And we'll create a distribution group, an email, similar to what we did for our teachers. So if you're 18 years old and you wish to be vaccinated, we'll send something out. You can give us the information we need. We'll create a distribution list in the email. And I typically get those links for county-run sites as they're made available. So if I quickly email that group, anybody who's eligible can do that. The other side of it is if you're on that list, they'll put you on a standby list. So as they vaccinate, if they open a new vial and they take one shot out and there's 10 left, they'll call 10 people off the standby list and say, are you able to get here right now? If so, you can get your first vaccine today.
Oh, okay.
So sort of two approaches. One, you'll get the links as they're available. We'll do our best to get them out to you in a timely manner. Two, you'll be added to a standby list where you'll be able to answer your phone and go down. So that's only for those seniors who are currently 18. I'm still working on the Pfizer front. Pfizer is likely to become the first one to be available 12 through 17. So if that happens again, would be a great deal of need in the community, and I would love to have something locally, as local as Putnam Valley High School, but at the very least in the county. Question? Okay. 70 people? At least 70 people. Okay. We'll have to put it in a Google Forms survey. So back to this. We did run our last COVID testing clinic on Monday before we reopened school. We had 36 individuals sign up to be tested. Thankfully, all of them came back negative. I still get lots of questions about end-of-year events. We are awaiting long-awaited updated guidance from New York State. I'm hopeful we'll include some language about graduations or proms or end-of-year events. But as it stands right now, the current limitations are still in place. 150 individuals for indoor events, and that includes with testing. We'd have to test all 150 individuals. So those are numbers that would be used for like our prom. 200 outdoors without testing, up to 500 outdoors with testing. So if those numbers stand, which I don't personally think they will, it's going to complicate things. Right now, the senior prom is limited to only seniors, so we have to start with the most restrictive option, and then if that number goes up, then we can start allowing underclassmen to go, individuals from outside. But we can't right now, with 140 seniors, allow everyone to bring someone else, because we would exceed the current limitation. You have another question for me, Jess? If I knew when that was going to happen, I could sell the secrets for lots of money, but I do not know. As early as any second, as late as never, somewhere in between there. And then obviously for graduations, 200 outdoors does not meet our need.
Right.
So we would be forced to do sort of split graduation ceremonies like we did last year if that number does not shift.
And you say they have to be tested. What if they've been vaccinated twice, have proof of vaccination twice? Do they have to be tested also?
No. If you have proof of vaccination, you would not need to be tested.
And when you say 500, because obviously that's more than our students, that's guests too. We would theoretically have to test guests.
Yeah, everyone. Yes.
Right. So for outdoors, we could have 200 without testing, but 200 isn't enough for our parents. We would need more. We could have up to 500 with testing, but I have no mechanism to test parents. Even though we have a testing license, I can only test my own students and staff. So there's no mechanism for us to actually make that happen, to have 500 people outdoors. Again, I'm optimistic it's going to change, but it's a waiting game until we receive that guidance. You guys said you were done. I'm going to stop answering your questions.
Stop it.
Go ahead.
In the ideal world that Jess lived in, that if we got obviously the entire senior class vaccinated, possible, majority, because then they would technically have a problem without testing.
They would be able to go, but the number is still 150. It wouldn't increase our number beyond 150. It's 150 individuals vaccinated or tested, but it's still, the number is 150. All right, so testing, go ahead. Question
No, I'm
about?
just saying, let's hope we get guidance soon.
I think last spring we had 3 different graduation plans, like a week before graduation,
Yep.
before we finally got guidance that allowed us to have our outdoor event.
We got lucky enough they were actually able to have graduations, whereas others that had them early, tried to do drive-throughs or drive-ins, and they got squashed. And
I think we're one of 2 districts in our region that actually had a graduation on campus outdoors. So I did send a memo out to the community regarding testing. We did send out a survey asking families to either opt in or opt out of the state assessments for this year. I won't get into all the details of the letter. It's certainly parents' family choice, which they do, but obviously there's a great deal of planning that has to happen on our side. How do we accommodate those students who wish to take the exam? How do we accommodate safely those students who do not want to take the exam, all in school the same day at the same time, while maintaining all the safety protocols we have in place? So there's a tremendous amount of logistics that we have to figure out, but the first step to that is to figure out how many are testing and how many are not. So if you have not yet completed that survey, please do so as soon as possible. After tomorrow, we will have the offices begin to reach out to individuals who have not yet completed the survey. I believe a reminder email went out today to the whole community again. So just encouraging everyone, let us know your wishes, all parents, grades 3 through 8.
I was very confused when you started talking about testing, and it wasn't about COVID anymore.
And it took me a minute. I had a shift.
Try to put at least 1 or 2 non-COVID related things in here.
But can I ask, are regions not in that? Regions are happening?
Regions are happening, yes. So,
Jess has a question. I know you're surprised by that.
as much as I love to take other people's credit, you don't have to give me credit. That was a decision that was made at the high school, so. So professional development, we spoke a lot over the past couple months about possibly moving 5th grade to the elementary school. I know we've done a great deal of sort of research behind the feasibility of making that happen. I think the number one driving factor behind that move was the discrepancy in instructional time between an elementary school student and a middle school student. We have all but signed an agreement with the Putnam Valley Federation of Teachers that's going to help close the gap between instructional time in the elementary school and the middle school. So in my sense, as long as we're able to get that done, signed, sealed, that I would not recommend making the move this school year. There's too much unknown regarding what the reopening of schools in the fall will be. To make that move and then be forced to move them back or to scurrying for spaces in the elementary school just makes me uneasy at this time. Not to say I don't believe that the elementary school is the right place for fifth grade or that it'll be the eventual home for fifth graders. I just think if we can address what was really the driving factor behind the conversation, which was the discrepancy in instructional time, that's enough, at least for me, to table it. Let's get more information. Let's see how schools reopen next year, and then we could always have future conversations about where's the rightful place for fifth grade and where are they best served. So I just wanted to provide that update. Quick recap of today's professional development sessions. Our elementary school did a sustainable self-care workshop. Middle school teachers worked on aligning next-gen standards, writing content and grade-level curriculum work, and our high school worked on end-of-year assessments. As Parker alluded to, our fall production, Voices from the Pandemic, is available on the website. Certainly very deep, very emotional, raw. Like Barbara said, I had to walk away a couple of times, make me a little depressed. But certainly it's truly emotions of how students are feeling at that time. And we are quickly preparing for what is our virtual spring musical, The Drowsy Chaperone. And we anticipate next board meeting awarding a contract for the second phase of our facilities project, which focuses on the middle school bathrooms, which were always part of the plan, but weren't able to get done last summer, to one of the contractors who was here this year, who I won't say until it's signed. That's it. Thank you.
Dr. Luft, can you talk a little bit more about what's happening out here, out there?
Out there, sure.
Sorry.
So we're in the current facilities project. We're at the final stages of the Health and Wellness Center. One thing you may notice, anyone who is in the high school, is we have a courtyard across adjacent to the entrance of the Performing Arts Center, and it should be well utilized. It's just an awesome space, and it's never been really utilized by students. It's grass, it gets dewy and wet, it gets muddy. It's just not the most conducive space for students to go hang out. So in collaboration with Dave Spittle, our facilities director, we were able to design a very modern looking courtyard, and the contractor who's finishing the grading around the Health and Wellness Center, sort of scraping up what was the old parking lot and replanting grass and just putting it in its finished state so we can plant some trees and be done with it, is doing that work to really make what we think that's going to be sort of an exciting space for students to go out there. We're going to have some tables and chairs. I want to put some Adirondack chairs out there and really give students a space to spread out, especially during their community lunch. So that's the vision for that space, and should be ready and really by the end of next week at the earliest.
Are we going to revisit the student designs that were done for that courtyard, what, 5 years ago?
I would love to see the student designs for that courtyard from 5 years ago. Any other questions? Thank you very much.
That brings us to public contribution only on the listed agenda items. Do we have anything, Ms. Bueno? Okay. All right, so that then moves us right into new business. And Mr. Ferraro, I'm going to ask you to start us off with number 1.
Turns into wear the glasses time.
Right.
Resolved on a recommendation, the superintendent of schools to appoint Jessica Nuth to a 4-year probationary term as teacher as a teacher commencing on September 1st, 2021, and terminating on August 31st, 2025, in the tenure area of elementary at the Putnam Valley Elementary School on Step 3MA of the PBFT salary schedule. Ms. Nuth holds childhood education 1 through 6 initial certification. In order to be eligible for the appointment to tenure, said employee must receive at least 3 APPR ratings of effective or highly effective during the 4-year probationary term and may not receive an ineffective rating in the final year of probation.
Second.
Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
And welcome. I know there are some faces I don't recognize, so I'm assuming there are some of our appointees.
I'll embarrass them when their time
Okay,
comes.
so welcome
Last time.
to Ms. Nutt, who is not able to be here this evening. Moving on to number 2.
Resolved on the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to appoint Melissa Sullivan to a 4-year probationary term as a teacher, commencing on September 1st, 2021, and terminating on August 31st, 2025, in the tenure area of elementary at the Putnam Valley Elementary School on Step 1MA of the PVFT salary schedule. Ms. Sullivan holds childhood education 1 through 6, students with disabilities 1 through 6, and early childhood B through 2 professional certifications. In order to be eligible for appointment to tenure, said employee must receive at least 3 APPR ratings of effective or highly effective during the 4-year probationary term and may not receive an ineffective rating in the final year of probation.
Second.
Questions or comments?
Ms. Sullivan is here this evening, so we'll forego the prerequisite formal speech of acceptance. But we will
Which
ask
we've
her,
never asked anyone to do.
We will ask her to stand and wave. We'll skip the handshake, but just to acknowledge her and welcome her on board. Congratulations.
Did we do all in favor?
No?
All in favor? Aye. Welcome
Now-
officially. Number 3, Mr. Cohen.
Resolved on recommendation of the superintendent of schools to appoint, and I apologize, Miss Juliana Shahabo.
Yell it out, Giuliano.
Okay, thank you, Juliana. To a 4-year probationary appointment as a special education teacher, commencing on September 1st, 2021, and terminating on August 31st, 2025, in the tenure area of special education at the elementary school on Step 1 MA of the PVFT salary schedule. Ms. Shalhoub holds student with disabilities grades 1 through 6, childhood education grades 1 through 6, initial certification. In order to be eligible for appointment to tenure, said employee must receive at least 3 APPR ratings of effective or highly effective during the 4-year probationary term and may not receive an ineffective rating in the final year probation.
Second.
Questions or comments?
Obviously, Juliana is also here this evening with her parents, so you want to stand and wave and be...
All in favor?
Aye.
Welcome, Joanna. Are we at 4? 4.
Resolve on recommendation, superintendent of schools to appoint Cyan Sarducio to a 4-year probationary term as a teacher commencing on September 1st, 2021, and terminating on August 31st, 2025, in the tenure area of elementary at the Putnam Valley Middle School on Step 1BA of the PVFT salary schedule. Ms. Carduccio holds childhood education grades 1 through 6 initial certification. In order to be eligible for appointment to tenure, said employee must receive at least 3 APPR ratings of effective or highly effective during the 4-year probationary term and may not receive an ineffective rating in the final year of probation.
Second.
Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
And welcome to Cyan as well. Number 5, Mrs. Parmley.
Resolved on the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to appoint Brittany Tyndall to a 4-year probationary term as a teacher, commencing on September 1st, 2021, and terminating on August 31st, 2025, in the tenure area of elementary and special education at the Putnam Valley Middle School on Step 2 MA of the PVFT salary schedule. Ms. Tyndall holds childhood education 1 through 6 and students with disabilities 1 through 6 professional certifications. In order to be eligible for appointment to tenure, said employee must receive at least 3 APPR ratings of effective or highly effective during the 4-year probationary term and may not receive an ineffective rating in the final year of probation.
Second.
Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Welcome, Mrs. Tyndall. Number 6.
Resolved on recommendation of the superintendent of schools to appoint Jessica Wymore to the probationary appointment of school nurse at the high school effective May 3rd, 2021, with a probationary period of 52 weeks, May 3rd, 2022, on Step 5 of the CSEA salary schedule.
Second.
Questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. And welcome to our new nurse, Ms. Wymore. Number 7.
Sure. Resolved on recommendation of superintendent of schools to accept the resignation of Jeanette Mistretta, the Director of Curriculum and Instruction from the district effective close of business on June 30th, 2021.
Second.
Questions or comments?
I'll try not to get too mushy. So obviously, we want to thank Ms. Mistretta for many years of dedicated service to Putnam Valley as a teacher, as an assistant principal, and most recently as our Director of Curriculum Instruction. She knows that she will be deeply missed by all and irreplaceable, but we'll certainly have a more formal goodbye before the end of the year. She will be with us through June. We will begin the process of finding and posting and trying to fill the position. But again, we want to wish Ms. Mistretta the best in her future endeavors. So thank you.
If I don't call for a vote, does it not happen?
I asked her she asked what would happen if the board voted no.
Let's start with all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I'm going to add,
Nay.
With regret.
With
Our-
regrets, deep
Oh,
regrets.
right. All right. Go ahead, move, be happy, fine.
Abandon us, it's okay. We'll get along.
So selfish.
Number 9.
No, 8.
8, sorry. I got off for Clemps.
Okay, I just want to be sure I'm on 8. Okay, resolved to amend the Board of Education meeting dates approved at the business meeting of March 18th, 2021, as per document number 163/21, attached to the agenda and official minutes of this meeting.
Second.
Questions or comments?
What we're doing here is we're just changing the date of our March 2022 meeting from the 17th to the 24th. So we're just moving the date up 1 week.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now, number 9.
Resolved by the Putnam Valley Board of Education to adopt a tentative budget for the 2021-22 school year in the amount of $53,196,499.
Second.
Questions or comments? I believe it's a fiscally responsible budget. I know how hard Dr. Luft and Ms. Figueroa and her whole team and Dr. Gardy and Ms. Mistretta have worked to ensure that. So I think after hearing the details, we are ready to adopt it today. All in favor? Aye. Did I hear 4 ayes?
Yes.
Okay. All right, moving on to the consent agenda.
Resolved to approve the consent agenda items 2 through 9 as presented to the board at this meeting.
Second.
Questions or comments?
We're approving unpaid leave for 2 staff members. We're approving a health and welfare contract with the Dobbs Ferry Free School for one of our students who are attending the master's school, and with the Union Free School District of Tarrytown for 6 of our students who are attending the Hackley School. We're approving additions to the substitute tutor list. We're approving the spring coaches and volunteers who are going to get paid, or the volunteers who are helping us, for all the sports, and that's including track, lacrosse, golf, baseball, and volleyball. We're approving following additional winter coaches for the JV basketball team. We're approving an agreement with the School Health Corporation for a special keyboard for a staff member. We're accepting a donation of $4,000 for the high school science research program from the Society for Science and the Public in recognition of 2 of our high school students who were winners and recognized by the Regeneron Science Awards. And that was Emma Silverman, whose project was examining differences in blood calcium, phosphorus, and T4 levels in dogs. And they looked at the association between neutering and age and life expectancy and all sorts of other conditions. And the other student was Aaliyah Steele, who looked at visual cortex examination and how well your brain works under various conditions. We're approving an additional assignment of 1/10 FTE for a staff member to work with E&L students who needs this during her 8th period.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Board docs just shut off, but I think we're at,
Public comment on any
public,
topic.
that's what we're at.
Deborah has a question. She just wants to know what does the calendar look like now around Memorial Day? I responded back to there's no change in what the calendar reflects. It's just Monday. Am I incorrect?
For this school year?
Yeah.
Yeah, just the Monday.
Okay. Is the next item future meetings?
Yep, so just a quick look ahead. Our next meeting is April 20th. It's one of the most exciting ones. We get to confer our teachers and teaching assistants up for tenure. One of the saddest ones, we get to acknowledge some of our retirees. And the most exciting part is our BOCES budget and trustee vote. So that's all on the 20th of April. May 4th, we're hoping to have a presentation. We're inviting the high school back to do a presentation, provide some examples of the IB work. On May 20th, our business meeting, Ms. Mistretta is going to join us to highlight some of the special areas and provide an update on the anti-racism committee. And then on June 3rd, we have KG&D scheduled to talk about the 5-year facilities plan.
Okay.
Any other topics we would like to add to any of those meetings?
No? I'm good?
Good.
Okay. So I'd now, at this time, like to resolve to convene an executive session for 4 matters of the employment histories of 4 particular persons, 1 matter of collective negotiations pursuant to Article 14 of the Civil Service Law, the Taylor Law, and 1 matter that may lead to the appointment of a particular corporation, after which time no further business will be conducted.
Second.
Questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Continue to enjoy that spring weather, everyone. Good night.